Call the meeting to order. Before we get into anything, why don't we just do a quick round of introductions to all sort of know each other a little bit. So, Patrick Huber, longtime member of the commission and current chair this year.
Marc Bessière, I've been there one term some.
Hello, I'm Chris Gardner. I'm the Open Space Night Manager for the city. I'm sitting in for Tracy tonight as the staff liaison.
I'm Christopher Alberts. I'm the alternate here for the commission. Also, I'm a planner for Sac County.
My name is Roberto Cabanillas. I've been a commissioner since the beginning of 2020, and I'm a first year law student here at UCS.
I'm Christina Harrington. It's my first meeting. Sorry, I missed the last one. First time commissioner.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Steve Greco, first year commissioner.
Hi, Sarah Dixie. I believe I've been on the commission for 2 years now. I'm Lindsay Korea. I don't know how many other terms. Almost 4 years.
Yeah.
On that commission.
Okay. So roll call. I think we are all here. Is that right? That doesn't happen very often. So that's great. Let's move over to the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve?
I motion to approve the agenda.
Any seconds on that?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Anything anyone wants to add? Good. Okay. All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I have an agenda. Let's move over to brief announcements. I'll let Chris catch up. Generally, Tracy kind of takes the lead on announcements. I don't know if you have any announcements besides what's on the agenda.
I don't have any additional announcements from Tracy. I have a brief presentation at the end.
Right. Okay, good. Anyone else have any announcements?
I have a question. I'd like to know your like what your world consists of.
Oh yeah, that's good because most of you don't know Chris. Chris is fantastic, so go ahead.
So I'm the Open Space Night Manager. So I'm a full-time kind of operational staff for the entire Open Space program. So that is, all of the actual on-the-ground management tasks for the city-owned parcels that we specifically are managing for public access with Habitat. So I know you all deal with a wider kind of band of open space. I'm specifically on the parcels that the city owns and that we have public access on. So the big one is South Fork Nature Preserve. Second biggest is Wild Horse Ag Buffer. Our newest is the islands in North Davis at F. Anderson. And then we have several other sites around town. I think there's 9 or 10 of them, depending on kind of how they're classified. North Davis, South Davis, East Davis, not really too much in West Davis. But so I'm out there on the equipment, on the ground, actually doing stuff. I run all of our contracts, all of our partner engagement. So I get the contracts, I run the contractors, do all the kind of admin for that kind of stuff, do kind of all the short and long-term planning for what we're doing on the parcels, work with volunteers, work with service partners, do all that, and then try to support Tracy with whatever she needs for the bigger program.
Thank you, that was great.
You've been with us for what, like 4 years or something like that?
8.5.
8.5 already? Okay. Wow. Okay. And he is the designer and implementer on the F Street project.
Yeah, on that Uplands. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So doesn't sound like any other announcements. No one from the public is here, so we don't need to do public comment. So we'll move into a consent calendar with the minutes from last month's meeting being on that. We have a motion to approve.
Motion approved.
Okay, thanks, Ramiro. Second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussions, changes added to that? Anyone saw? All in favor of approving the consent calendar, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Moving on quickly to, I believe, our first main item. Yes. About the Beauchamps property.
Tracy asked me to pull up the map. I have the whole report here if you want to go through it. But she wanted the map up while you were discussing.
How about, I'll just lead off saying that Tracy and Mark and Sarah and I, as the acquisitions subcommittee for this at this point, went out to do a trip out there just to check out what the parcel looked like. And so what we saw out there is going into the report that Chris has. I don't know if you want to give a quick summary of what's in the report, Chris.
This report is, she's done the request for the preliminary. This is the full preliminary acquisition report for the property. The name here. Beauchamps. So yeah, almost it's about 76.5 acres of production. It's class 1 and 2 soils. It's AN designation, so it's the highest ag designation County gives as far as priority. It is not currently under development, but apparently there are developer-owned parcels, I believe, down here. And there is a high potential for rural development. So subdividing this piece is considered, there's a high potential for that. There's a lower but still existing potential for more urban development even on this parcel, mostly due to the how close it is to 30. Great. And then another weird thing is that this bridge is going to be rebuilt.
Yeah.
So that's
But that's an important link to, this is a dry slough that comes up through the far northwest corner of that, which is one of our few remaining kind of riparian potential corridors or existing corridors within the region, which goes almost all the way down to Poudre Creek to the southwest. And so it's, in my mind, an important place for us to think about preventing more development and enabling potential future restoration, habitat enhancement.
And also, what's important is that the parcels, the triangular parcels and the parcels that are right over along the creek are already under measurable. Oh, you have that. All right. Okay, here we go.
yes.
So all the green.
protection.
So that's another argument, is that it's adjacent to that, so it kind of continues the the protection there.
And one, if you go back to the previous map, Chris, for a second, one slight little caveat is that over on the far west side, you can see that there's a little developed area with a house, and so there's a little envelope south of Dry Slough itself that will be excluded from the easement, just right where the house is, right there. There's already a house, so there's not going to be development there, but that little, it's so it'll be
How
carved
many
out.
acres is that that's carved out?
About an acre and a half.
Yeah.
Okay, it's pretty small. And you said there's a bridge on the property?
The bridge is on just right here on 96.
On the west edge.
It's in the report that the county's replacing this bridge sooner rather than later.
Okay.
So I don't know what that means for this.
And it is actually part of our parcel that we're considering?
No, I think it's just about access to the parcel.
And there could be impacts from the bridge replacement on, a little bit into
Sure.
the parcel.
Sure.
So it's just row crops in there right now. Yeah. So
And we're talking about an agricultural easement.
Yeah.
but we can also make recommendations that areas adjacent to dry slough can have kind of habitat enhancement, restoration types of things if we want.
Can we get into this easement a restriction against orchards?
We can certainly recommend it. Yes.
Because that would fit with the YOLO habitat desire to have more row crops for the Swainson's hawk.
Right.
And if we could, that would be a good thing because it seems like these parcels are just going to orchards like that as soon as somebody gets a hold of it.
Right.
We should restrict that if we could. That's my recommendation.
Well, kind of building on that, do we know what kind of farming practices are used there now? And I've been curious just from a bigger point of view, when we go into negotiation, if the city did, can the terms of the agreement comment on that or suggest that? Like, if it's conventionally farmed, transitioning to organic or more sustainable practices, or what's kind of the parameters around that?
As far as I know, we can ask for whatever we want in the easement, but that might adjust the cost.
Right.
Council might not be interested in having a super restrictive easement.
Yeah.
So I would recommend, if we want to go that direction, is have kind of a tiered recommendation that we're passing along, that we want to protect it if possible, organic, not tree crops or something like that.
My understanding right now is it's mostly tomatoes and sunflowers and that type of row crop that they're doing.
Right. It's pretty typical local rotation right now.
And it's, from what I know, it's
Annual.
conventional. Yeah, annual growth with the rotation.
Can I ask another question? I have
course.
more questions to
Yeah,
make just
go
because I
for it.
do, but in the report it says Williamson Act status under contract for title report. So what does that mean in all these reports? It's already under contract, so it already has some kind of easement on it, or does anyone?
Williamson Act is a temporary easement,
Okay, so it has that, but the city is proposing to make it
a permanent easement. Yeah.
Have you guys looked at the parcel that's to the west of the site that has more of the slough going through it?
Have we looked at it?
Yeah, like, has it been something that's been analyzed?
Yeah, I don't think necessarily. I mean, these are interested owners that have kind of come to us and saying they're interested in a potential easement. I mean, we saw the parcel while we were over there, but I don't have any information about that owner.
And then did you say you can make recommendations on like habitat enhancement to the adjacent properties, or it's only to the actual property?
To the actual property, what I was suggesting is that because dry slough goes through there, we might want to say within 100-foot buffer on either side, or whatever size we want to make it. Suggest that the easements say that it could be taken out of ag and put into more of a restoration, natural habitat kind of state. Because we don't really, in my opinion, we don't want to limit ourselves to the narrow little dry slough as it is now. If there's an
Is that
opportunity.
something we should put into our recommendation?
Yes.
Is the distance?
I think so.
Like 500 feet, 100 feet? You're saying 100 feet?
That was just a random number that I just pulled out of
We
the air.
should probably discuss that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I wasn't making a recommendation for the
Yeah.
recommendation. I was making a recommendation for the recommendation for the recommendation.
But then that would require additional compensation to the owner.
I don't think that it necessarily would. We're not saying that they have to take it out of ag. We're just
Okay.
allowing that possibility in the future if someone wants to do
Just
that.
allowing, right? But then there would be another negotiation for that too.
The owner of the property gets to decide whether or not a habitat enhancement
It's
happens.
just to leave the possibility. That's my understanding.
Yeah.
You cannot require that kind of thing unless you.
Purchase.
Right. So we just want to, tie our hands behind our back in the future if there's an opportunity to kind of widen the corridors through there.
Yeah, I would definitely try to get a number in there of some kind.
Right. I have to
This is
have you craft a motion, Steve, with numbers and specifics.
I have to cogitate on this. That we are just getting development easement. We don't have control over the property itself.
No.
So, and it would increase the cost if we widen.
I don't think so. We're not saying that anyone has to do anything. It can all still stay in ag.
Chris, could you go back to that Google map image?
And in fact, I don't know that we even need a buffer. We could just say
Yeah.
Could you
on
just
the property itself.
can you measure the width of that thing?
Oh, I don't know if I can. I'm on.
It's
I think the recommendation,
You can see the little
It's a
scale bar
PDF,
right there. So
I
the
think
whole
we're getting ahead of ourselves.
yeah.
Because I think the point is to make a recommendation to begin formal negotiations.
Yeah.
And I think like working out the details. I don't know. Is this the point where we work out all those details?
maybe not, but it doesn't hurt us to put that in at the beginning so that that's kind of in people's
Also,
mind. I think.
Yeah. Also, let's look at
I would agree with you.
the Google again.
Because it's only 100 feet wide.
Yes. Yes.
So,
But yeah, remember, I mean, the adjacency to the slough is really tiny for that house. So how much do we want to?
I know, it's like-
I mean, we can mention it, but
I mean, in any of these, in agricultural lands, are we not already, is there not something standard about encouraging habitat enhancement on working lands as part of?
I don't know that there is.
Because, I mean, it seems like that would be more of a policy, like an overarching policy statement that
right.
you would want to support rather than, I mean, I don't think we should put a number, like, we haven't analyzed, I mean, that would be based, in my opinion right now, I don't think I have enough information to say, oh, that's science-based. So, but if it's like a policy that we're open to habitat enhancement, the appropriate habitat enhancement given the landscape, right, just on working lands, I think that could be something to consider, but beyond that, it seems.
Yeah, I don't really know what the letter of the funding program reads through Department of Conservation, which is where we're going to be going to get some matching funds for this.
Well, I mean, the state has taken a pretty strong policy perspective on nature-based solutions on working lands.
No, I understand that. I just don't know what the.
It would be consistent. It's just whether or not whatever is put into the report needs to say that at this point, or if that's will be included in part of some application process anyway.
Is there precedent? Are there other parcels that we've bought an easement on that we could look at as like a template, or maybe they have mentioned something about this? Or you've been here a long time. Have you seen anything like that?
We haven't really had one of these properties where this has come up like this.
Well, could it be part of the recommendation? I mean, this is essentially a recommendation from the committee for Tracy to take action to prepare the appropriate recommendation. to the council.
And I think that's the right approach to take, really, is for the whole parcel, just saying that we don't want to preclude.
The opportunity for
Exactly.
habitat enhancement.
Yep.
The goal of the easement in general is to prevent specific things. So it's wide open what it allows for. It's designed to prevent a few specific things from happening, like cropping systems, specific cropping systems, and things like that. It doesn't otherwise preclude the landowner from doing other things. And having the easement as far as other like cost sharing opportunities through the state to the federal government for that landowner, that would even help them do more of that once that easement's in place. So,
The one thing I will say is, if we do prevent tree crops from going in, that's going to increase the cost of the easement, which I'm okay with, but just to make sure that we're on that.
I think it's worth it, but that's my opinion.
Does someone want to throw out a motion?
To that point, sorry.
Yeah.
I am curious. I didn't know about this orchard versus road crop preference. I would be curious as to how many of the easements that the city's in contract with is under road crop versus orchard. I think that would be interesting. Because I know the other two, the gill and the deer, are
Already.
we're planning to be turning into.
Right.
Yeah, it's
So that's
the whole county's been turned into a freaking
And
forest if we don't do something.
and
And it's a big concern of the YOLO habitat. Concerns.
yeah, because I don't know the scope of what we already have, like how many like already in orchard or planning to be in orchard or
One thing is, if we're trying to support the YOLO Conservancy, like that's part of the agreement with them, is that we would be looking at their priorities. This would be a way to do that.
I believe, doesn't the Yolo Habitat Conservancy, the Yolo Land Trust or Conservancy will hold the easement the city is paying for it.
Right.
So this is in line with their
It is in line.
priorities. I'm trying to find, I know on our website we have a list of our easements, and I believe it has a little blurb about the easement. So
Well, we have a mix of easements on orchards and row crops.
right, and there
I
is,
don't know if the row crops actually have restrictions on going to orchard or not.
well, the other thing is that there's a difference between an agricultural easement and agricultural conservation easement. So one is preventing just development on ag land, the other is actually adding habitat parameters to what farming can be done on that parcel. So as far as I understand, this is an agricultural conservation easement, which would be the highest bar for habitat, which would likely mean it would stay forever in row crops. So, but that's something we would have to, Tracy said you want me to text her, I'm not going to text her.
No, but we could follow up if there's a
Specific question about the actual coverage of the easement.
But like Sarah was saying, it's just approving the preliminary at this point, right?
Right.
So there's gonna be another discussion about the final.
It'll come back to us.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And
That's probably the
yeah.
Yes, we're moving into the preliminary application stage right now.
Right. So I think
So our motion should be fairly narrow.
Well, we can also do like a step of this is our overall, this is what we want, this is something we can accept, something like that. Right, that we want to move forward on an easement if at all possible. We want to make sure that it stays in row crop, something like that.
I guess I'm reluctant to say we should. I think Sarah makes a good point. Like, what's the precedent for doing that? Like, have we done that for others? Just why this one and not other? I just easements.
What's the question, the specific question? Why?
Well, just like if we're gonna make it conditional to no orchards, like I just think that we need to have documented, like the commission has a position on that, or based on analysis, or based on some understanding.
Well, I think that Steve makes the point that the understanding is agreeing to the Yellow Habitat Conservancy wishes that the city's a signatory to.
But based on what Chris said, isn't that a redundancy of what's already in there? So I'm just trying to understand why we would.
So the easement goes on the deed. The easement is paid for by a party, that would be the city, and the easement is actually held by another. It can be paid for by the same or held by a different entity. And that entity exists to ensure that the easement is being followed, and it has essentially a monitoring. It has a monitoring easement on the easement, so to speak, where it can go and check these things, and that is, I believe, it is the YOLO Land Trust that we work with to do all of these. So the Land Trust holds that easement. The holder of the easement and the city jointly come up with the conditions that the landowner agrees to. Those conditions are based on the Yellow Habitat Conservancy's priorities. And so where we have the ability to keep the habitat, where the habitat hasn't been adjusted to something like permanent crops, we can do that at that highest part of the Swainson Soil Conservation level, where we're keeping things in row crops or open grassland, and then we can work down from there depending on the conditions. The basic easement without any habitat conditions would just be to prevent development, but I believe all of our easements have the conservation adjustment to it. So Tracy's not asking for you all to come up with specific habitat considerations that we want to see on each of these properties. That's between the land trust and the conservancy. The city's here to be the financial supporter of all of that, to make sure that those easements get paid for, because we have our Measure O money and our other money that we use as match to get the grants.
I'm going to push back on that a little bit, though, and we can put in any recommendations that we want on this easement.
Can it come in the form of a note, or does it have to be expressly conditional on this is what we want? If not, therefore,
We can make whatever recommendation we want about the easement.
So I would vote in favor of a note. I don't think we're at the level where we can even make it conditional, right? So
No.
we know that we want.
It doesn't have to be conditional.
Yeah. So per se,
It's
This is
just
our preference. Is that
It's
what you
just
might
our
know?
preference.
Yeah.
It's something we raised about that particular parcel. Because other parcel we're going to talk about, they're already in trees. This one is not. So can we,
and so if most of us are in favor of making this note for this to be conserved in row crops, we have to take a vote, right, for all of us to push this to city council, and we don't have to vote in agreement of this, right? If some people don't.
Whatever motion passes, needs to pass by majority, and people can vote however they want on it.
Would everybody be okay with a note stating that we'd like to see row crops as opposed to orchards? Would that sound fair?
Yeah, but I think also to Lindsay's point, and so yeah, we could definitely do that just so we know for sure. But like Chris said, this is for like the highest entitlement easement that's out there, which I think already restricts that from what he was saying. So therefore, like Lindsay was saying, it might just be a little repetitive. Making a recommendation to have that, but at the same time, it wouldn't hurt either.
Yeah, being
Okay.
repetitive doesn't hurt.
Doesn't
anything.
hurt. All right. Okay.
Tracy will take whatever she can to the negotiations.
Yeah. All
What do
right.
you think? You still don't want it in
It
there?
should still be something like explore the potential, for that in the easement language, not like, because otherwise it sounds like this is our. I guess what Sarah said made me think of, there is no analysis that has informed, because you're like, well, which
It's well
percentage,
described.
where is it?
There's a lot of analysis on it.
There's a lot of analysis in the monster document that was made for the.
No, she's not talking about that. You're talking about that.
Recommendations as a commission, so that was my point, of just some consistency in our approach, so. I think I
Also-
would be comfortable with saying something like, and explore the opportunity for the
want it to be stronger than that, and I'll say about the past that we haven't been in this position as a commission with the Yellow Habitat Conservancy in place. We've done the Gill property easement, and that was already an orchard. We haven't tackled this particular issue of row crops versus orchards and what we want to see by spending Measure O money on ag easements.
Ever? I think that was the question earlier that Sarah asked. Like, how do we
Done that before. Is that your concern?
Well, just
Okay.
like what
I'm
percentage
just curious.
of I think what I would, no, yeah, when I just wasn't sure what point we're at. If this is just a recommendation to start the negotiation.
Right.
Is this where we need to put in these specific?
I think it might be surprising if it's not put in sooner. If it's put in later, it's like, oh, geez, we're renegotiating everything. And they should know up front that this is what we want.
Well, I also think it's important just to note that it is a recommendation. So it's like, at the end of the day, they can say no and we move forward still, just without the recommendation.
Yeah.
And so, I guess when you were to recommend it, making a recommendation, you could put what you want, and either way, it's a trigger them to explore it by just having it some way on paper, or get verbally in the meeting discussed.
This is a recommendation to the city. I mean, they can do what they want with it.
This is a recommendation to the council.
Make recommendations
Yeah.
to the city council.
Yeah.
The city begin formal negotiations with the property owner over the terms of the agricultural conservation easement.
Yeah.
Is what we're making.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate to say something.
I do too.
Maybe the note is the way to go. Just at this stage, like you're saying, it's really early. We don't have to demand it, but we want to make sure that it's
Addressed.
explicit. It's that way.
And we can't really demand anything of it.
No, we can't.
We're just, this is what we think should happen, and now go do what you're going to do. All right, does someone want to make a motion? Which isn't the end of the discussion, but just to have something explicit out there for us to either discuss, vote on.
Yeah, I guess I can go back to it. We, the commission, would like to make the recommendation to the city council, our motion to make the recommendation to city council that the city begin formal negotiations with the property owner over the terms of agricultural conservation easement. Noting, and I guess we can all workshop this right now, noting that we would like to, or that the city, or that the commission's, that there is a, that the commission would like to see row crops take priority over implementation of orchards.
We have a second on that.
I'll second that.
Okay, we'll open it to discussion.
Would it be stronger to add the race minus to line? To preserve it in row crops versus orchards? So adding, prioritize row crops over orchards in order to align with priorities of the Yellow Habitat Conservancy.
You're proposing that as a friendly amendment to Ramiro's motion?
Okay.
I think that sounds like a good idea. Okay. Gives it
say
some
it
rationale.
again? Can you say the whole thing again?
Okay, so,
It's a memory game.
yeah, it would be a motion to recommend that the city council, to the city's council, that the city begin formal negotiations with the property owner over the terms of the agricultural conservation easement, noting the commission's preference to prioritize row crops over orchards in line with the YOLO Habitat Conservancy's priorities.
Does anyone want to add anything about ensuring that habitat enhancements are allowable under whatever easement is formalized?
Well, that makes me question if the formal negotiations consistent, like if you need to say anything about row crops, because if that and habitat enhancement are part of the Yolo County Habitat Conservation Plan, then you would just need to say consistent with
I disagree with that. That it hurts to be crystal clear what you're going for.
Not crystal clear, but it can connote other policy priorities that I just, like, I'm not clear if we, like, I know enough, like, if I read that plan enough, so I'm just
Which is why we want to actually put what we mean by adhering that plan in our motion, is what I'm saying. Is that okay?
Well, I mean, we don't all have to vote the same.
I know.
So-
My preference is to get to consensus. And I'm still a little bit unclear about what your uneasiness is with putting in the explicit language, even if it's redundant.
Yeah, my concern is that we're creating like like that we're not all on the same page of our understanding of what's in those priorities and any implications that, like, I'm, like, personally unaware of, saying, like, oh, we're going to be consistent with this plan that I don't know the details of. So I don't want to be making a recommendation to the council that I'm not informed about.
So you're uneasy about adhering it to the Yellow Habitat Conservancy.
I mean, I was comfortable with, like, the standard process of the recommendation as written in the report. Of, like, that's kind of our standard approach that we've taken for, the staff recommendation to prepare the agricultural conservation easement, and I was comfortable with, Tracy's process, but creating new processes where we want you to, like, making them almost conditional, or sort of putting in some other sets of priorities that I don't know, haven't learned about enough to say, like, that's where I'm uneasy. I don't understand what I'm recommending in full. So while it's more crystal clear to you, it's less crystal clear to me.
I would agree as well, because it's probably not comprehensive. Like, maybe we're missing other parts to add. Because we were talking about the row crops specifically, and then we were talking about the habitat enhancement. But, like, what else are we missing? So if we're actually going to go through these, like, let's make these priorities, I would want a more formal way to pick out these priorities. So maybe I would want one more session before doing that, and maybe not recommend to negotiate right now until we have, like, a more complete understanding.
Or if it's just the same, like, I was comfortable with, like, well, whatever Tracy's that seemed to make sense before, but I'm just concerned about putting in, like, overweighting these elements of that set of priorities could be interpreted as over other priorities in the plan, in the yellow conservation plan. So those are the things that make me uncomfortable with how.
I recommend you read the report.
And I'll also say that there is a time constraint here, like the funding that's going to be available to help get the property.
I helped write that thing.
Okay.
So I'm fine with, like, the staff like, I appreciate that you went out and looked in the staff report and was comfortable with, like, just the recommended action as written.
Well, since we have a motion in a second.
We do have a motion in a second.
Are we not able to go back on that? Now we just had to vote on what was.
We do have to take a vote on it unless Ramiro pulls it.
Unless somebody else wants to make another friendly amendment to add to the pile.
We could also friendly amend, I'm not going to propose this, I'm just saying, we could also friendly amend that we don't have enough, or at least some of the members of the commission are not informed enough to the point where we'd like to have this back on the table, placing also a special emphasis on the idea that we really want to revisit it again and discuss these ideas thoroughly. I know that's something that's implied that's going to come back to us, but if we're making notes that these things matter to us, maybe we should make a note that other things that we don't even know will also matter to us once we're more informed on it as well. I don't know, but then that would be extensive, just putting it out there.
I wonder if a way to a friendly amendment to maybe address both things I'm hearing is the last half of it being priorities for row crops, maybe habitat enhancement, if that's what we want to include, you know, including but not limited to these priorities per the YOLO Habitat Conservancy plan. So it's just calling out a couple of them, but it's not to imply that those are the ones we're suggesting should be prioritized over the other ones in the plan, which I also haven't read. But yeah, just so I don't know if that language tweak would be enough to address the concern, or examples such as, and then row crops and habitat enhancement.
Yeah, I think if we specify that exclusively these two, values of the Yellow Habitat Conservancy are the ones that we support, I think that's a good idea. I don't support necessarily all of it, just these two things matter just the most, or the most right now.
Or examples of some of the things that at least just came up in this conversation. I mean, I think what impacts me most is these are recommendations, like everyone else has mentioned before. It's not a binding thing that the city has to abide by.
Yeah. Personally, see a difference between those two ideas. One of them is that we wish that there would be, something in this agreement that precludes planting an orchard, which is kind of a big deal and tells the person what to do. I think what you're alluding to is allow for the possibility of further enhancement in the future without saying you're going to plant a bunch of, oaks along your property on a buffer of that much, right? So I think it seems like it's two different things.
Well, they are two different things.
They're very different in their consequences for the landowner at this point. I mean, when agreeing to go into an easement.
Okay, so are you offering a friendly amendment to
I
Ramiro?
don't know. What do you think about that?
It's good.
So
I
I
think
think
it got more locked in on the two priorities. So
But not limited to is the key phrase there.
Or suggesting aligning with the priorities of the local plan. Examples being row crops and habitat enhancement. Yeah.
That sounds
if
reasonable.
it's that or examples being
Broader, so not like locked into just these two or just these three or whatever. Okay.
that sounds redundant anyway with the existing process. Sure.
All right. Can somebody say that in one sentence?
One more time.
Poor Chris. All right.
So I think we have to pull the previous motion and redo it then, right?
These are friendly
It's
amendments.
a friendly amendment.
But does it have to encompass everything else? No, I didn't second. Everything else that was said before though. It doesn't change all the other friendly
That might be
amendments.
cleaner if we
We pull and redo.
Yeah.
Let's start over.
I pull my motion.
All right.
You have the floor now, Ramiro, for a second.
Christina, you have the good words.
All right, we're gonna have to workshop this. Motion to recommend that the city council that the city begin formal negotiations with the property owner over the terms of the agricultural conservation easement, noting that the commission has a preference to see row crops.
Preference to see the agreement terms align with the priorities set out in the YOLO Habitat Conservancy plans. Examples including prioritizing row crops over orchards and enhancing
And enabling habitat enhancement.
I fully agree with that language.
Do we have a second on that?
I second the motion.
Thank you.
All right.
Any more discussion on this? Are we ready to go to a vote?
Did you get all this, Chris?
No, I didn't write it.
Okay. Can somebody write it down for him?
I got motion to recommend the council to begin formal negotiations over this easement, noting that the Open Space Habitat Commission wants to see. I lost that verb right there. Noting that the Open Space Habitat Commission
Wants alignment with the Yellow Habitat Conservation Plan. For example, prioritizing row crops over orchards and enabling habitat enhancement.
row crops, repairing restoration.
No, not riparian restoration.
Habitat.
Habitat enhancement. Yeah. yeah. We're thinking about that little piece of riparian, but it's more general than this. Yeah. Okay.
So, Christine, you second.
Okay, any last thoughts, comments on this before we go to a vote?
All right.
Okay, all in favor of the motion on the table, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we got through it.
So those two abstentions.
I didn't say.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you didn't lift your hands. I was wondering. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for working through that.
Good.
Thanks.
I hope it worked out for you, at least enough to vote on. Okay, moving on to the next one.
So item B here, we're going to go through. This is the same recommendation that Tracy's asking for to take this to City Council and apply for the grant. So this is the full acquisition report here for the deer parcels. And so this is south of town, south of the creek, south of South Fork, immediately adjacent to Grasslands Park. 640 total acres.
I will add that there's a question on whether we can actually go for the southern 320 acres because the Davis planning area splits it in half right on that property boundary.
In between those two.
Between the red and the yellow.
Yeah.
With the yellow being outside. And so I know that Tracy is going to go to City Council and see whether we actually have the ability to spend Measure O money on that southern 320 acres.
But as a commission, we can recommend that we would like to see.
Yeah, but I think right now, what's in the potential recommendation is just the 320, right? Go back to that.
Yeah, just the 320.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Potential. Yeah. So the preliminary report is for the 320, and then the question will be raised with but it will probably because Measure specifically says that we deal with acquisition within the city of Davis. What is it?
Davis planning area.
Planning area. So,
but we can certainly make a recommendation that we make an exception in this case if we want to. There's nothing precluding that.
That's
feasible.
But that would be a separate. I
separate.
mean, Tracy's already, what you just said, Tracy's already working on exploring that, and that would be a separate acquisition report.
I think so.
I think so, but
Because the preliminary is only on the 320 at this point.
but it's close enough tied to it. There's enough of a nexus there that I think we can make a recommendation in whatever we say tonight. I'd be comfortable with passing that along. You're not comfortable with that.
What? This sounds like the same conversation all over. Like expanding what? Okay. It's okay. I mean, what we're
The 320.
acquisition report on the 320 that's specific to
Right.
this.
We can make any recommendations that we feel are on topic. That is our purview. We have flexibility. We are not hamstrung by specific little boxes. We can go outside if it's aligned to what the topic is at hand. But at least in my
Patrick, is it better to do like a separate resolution to say?
we can do that. That's fine.
I think that might be cleaner.
Yeah, I do.
That's fine. Yes.
Get this going.
Yeah.
And then look into the next part.
Yeah, exactly. This is just like a conservationist dream to see two parcels like that adjacent to an already conserved parcel.
Yeah.
It's just like that is all the principles of conservation planning right there.
I will say, except for one thing, which is that it's all newly planted orchard.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the potential for the future is nothing if you don't have anything else.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's adjacent to protected parcels to the north as well.
Yeah, it's just fantastic.
Yeah, but it really stood out to me that only 2 of the 6 priorities were actually met by this property, and I also was thinking of connectivity, but that doesn't seem to be a priority in the plan. So I didn't the measure of open space priorities that are laid out in the report. So 2 of 6 being met wasn't very compelling to me, to be honest. But and they noted that there wasn't any risk of development pressure, which to me seems like one of the big priorities of Measure O, like one of the purposes. I don't know if anyone has any comments on that. And it also noted it was not very high priority for the City of Davis plan, but it was for Yellow Habitat Conservation Plan. So just kind of some interesting inconsistencies I thought there too.
My understanding is that you don't have to hit every one of those. I mean, if you hit everyone, then you really want to do it, right? Now, if you have some of those, then it qualifies to do an acquisition. That's my understanding.
Oh, sure, but I guess what I'm thinking is like more of the strategy with like the funding that we do have and the land that is part of the priorities and those that meet 3 or more. I don't know if there's been discussion about tiers like that before, or if there's any kind of matrix that shows us like how much money do we have left, what properties could be purchased, and looking at that more strategically, but in less than half meeting the goals, I was like, ooh, I don't know. Like I understand the connectivity benefit, especially when we're right next to the park.
Yeah.
But just following the goals that have been set out.
I think she brings up a good point, because we are limited on funds, and it's hard to say no to any easement, right? It's like we're gonna want to say yes to everything. So like having a strategy or finding a way, like okay, well, what's if put one or the other, right? And she said this one needs 2 out of 6. And we saw how much we were debating on the last one on how it was supposed to meet this plan, all these policies, right? And we're seeing that this one's not even meeting half of the ones that we have laid out. So I think that's a good point. And maybe that's just for us to kind of do our homework in advance too, a little bit before going to the meetings and familiarizing ourselves with some of these policies and goals, and then having to come in here and make some better decisions on these easements. Because, like I said, it's hard to say no. Like, unless like the parcel was just completely ruined or something, right? It's like why waste your money on it? But all these sites kind of look the same. By the time you really get down into the details, is when you start to identify like, oh, wow, okay, well maybe this other site or our money can go further on a different property. Just like what you're saying.
I will say that this isn't arguing for or against anything, but the Measure O priorities were set a long time ago, and the Yellow Habitat Conservancy is much newer and was much more of a scientific analysis and process, and so they may not align, and so that's just something to keep in mind, that they're not necessarily going to line up exactly, and that maybe the Measure O original priorities need to shift, maybe not. I'm not saying either way, but there's this other process that's identified some other priority sites.
Yeah,
and those two things have different goals, right? I think they can fit together, but I think your point is well taken. The other thing also is my understanding is that we're not at this point limited by the amount of money that we spend because we have a good amount of money already, gathered, and also you have to realize that we are in a position where, thanks to Measure O, the city of Davis can be the catalyst to this acquisition of those easements because we're gonna go to get a grant from the state or from other, but mostly the state, right? And having some of our own money that we put in there makes it more likely for us to get the grant because they like to see that. So in a way, the city of Davis is in a position to be a catalyst to protect more land around Davis. And I think that's a good situation to be in, and I think we should really take advantage of that.
I think some of these comments and questions from the newer commissioners are raising. We haven't had a budget update in a bit. I don't know where we're at, but I think that would help. I mean, because I have similar questions that I think I asked at the last meeting too. Like, well, what's the cost of inaction on this? Like, how does it fit? So I think maybe that's like another independent of this report, like something that we can ask Tracy.
Yeah, and usually we get that at the June meeting, and then it got postponed. So yeah, we haven't had that in a while.
An update and helping people that make good timing to see how it all fits in with making progress on the overall program plan and where money does need to be spent or where we're making trade-offs. So I don't know how to put that into maybe the notes or
I think that should be something else. That should be something that goes to Tracy and to make sure we have a discussion about that,
like
including the budget, and then raise the arguments that you have been raising, and then look at how much money we have in measurable funds. And
What I think we could do is say go ahead and do a preliminary acquisition report,
right.
but say that we would not favor move forward until we get more of a
Yes.
Yeah.
or
I'm just saying maybe it's like a separate, like, hey, in this discussion we learned that we should have a future agenda item.
Right. That
I'm just trying. Yeah, I mean yes.
It's not part of our motion or anything.
no.
I was going to say that maybe generally supporting this property, but saying we want to have a better budget review before moving forward on it.
You would make it part of the resolution yourself?
It's possible.
I'd ask us.
I don't think-
I'm not asking for that. I'm
No.
just saying
Okay.
this discussion is making me realize that we haven't had that report in a while on the
Yeah.
budget, but maybe you should bring this back up during future
Right.
items for future meetings.
Got it.
Can I get clarity? Are we all just talking about the northern parcel
Yes.
with this discussion?
Yes.
Can I speak for Tracy to Christina's comment? Just on the generally on the availability of easements to purchase, there's not a lot, and Tracy does work really hard to even get to the point to have a conversation with the landowner to even get to where we're thinking about asking for money. And as far as I know, in our time here, we have not been so flush with requests for easements that we've had to prioritize. And in some
Yeah,
ways,
this is a unique meeting we're having right now.
Yes,
We have
yeah,
four
it is.
on.
And in some ways, the programmatic priority has been to get the money on the ground within the planning area with a willing landowner.
Right.
And that has been that's been the filter.
Got it.
Right.
Thank you for that.
Sort of add on to that, I was thinking about that. I think one of the issues that could arise when trying to prioritize different easements, whether they're in line or not with measures, or just lose an easement altogether. Perhaps it just moves by too quick because we're waiting for future easements to come in, which may or may not satisfy better than or less than this easement's missions, whether or not this easement met more or less goals. That's just something I see could be an issue if we use it as triaging.
And I'd just like to say, I think 2 out of 6 is pretty good. Myself, 33% is not bad.
Sometimes, yeah. Okay. That's helpful. It's my first meeting. I'm like, wow, we got 4 reports.
Oh, no,
I'm like, wow.
I think those are good points you're making, but yeah, we have.
Okay. Do we have anyone that wants to put forward a motion on this then?
Doing standard language like the previous motion, sort of the beginning was sort of like,
Right,
I would
the
say
first
that
step.
for
All
all
right.
of it. Right?
Yeah.
So let's
It's like
not make that up.
Just a
you know?
motion to go ahead.
Motion to recommend to the council to begin formal negotiations over the deer easement,
Not noting anything in my mind.
Not noting anything, and we're doing a separate thing on this.
Yeah.
Okay, that's-
Yeah. So just go ahead with it.
So that's the motion.
Who's making the motion? No one's made a motion yet.
That's all I can do.
Are you making a motion, Mark?
You know, when I try to make a motion, I get my feet in the carpet and
All you have to say is that you made a motion. We have the language right there
okay. So I make a motion to
to do that.
go ahead with the
Do we have a second on that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yes, I did. Okay. Thank you. Any other discussion on this? No. Okay. All in favor of the motion on the table, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay? Okay. Alright. Through the second one. Now, do we want to make an associated motion concerning the 7320?
Yes.
We talk about the southern.
Yes.
Yeah.
But is that even on the agenda? I don't think we can make motions or.
I think it's close enough to being the agenda item.
But the APN I don't think was listed in the description though. Like it's really very separate.
Yeah, it's on the northern APN.
Yeah.
It's on there.
I don't know. It's part of the
It
materials.
It is the APN is the
For the southern one
Yeah.
as well.
Mm-hmm. 033130001.
I think what is the motion?
Oh, it
Well,
just
no, if
says
it's-
it just says the property owner is also offering to sell a conservation easement on an additional 320 acres south of the subject site, BPM blah blah blah. But those acres are outside the Davis planning area. All 640 acres were recently planted in that trees.
So
It says it right there with the
Okay.
APN. I'm more than happy as chair to have a motion going forward to just explore the possibility of acquiring an easement on it.
Is that your motion?
I'm just saying I'm allowing someone to make that motion. I prefer letting other people, but if necessary, I'll make the motion.
okay. Make a motion to
I'm allowing Greco over there to make the motion.
I'm struggling with like the formal language. Like I just don't know enough about this motion business.
What Patrick said is what you want, I think.
I'm happy to make the motion.
All right.
Motion to
all right.
I move.
It's still questionable though, because we made a decision on that item,
Right.
And now we're trying to make a new decision after we move forward from that item.
No.
I feel like we should have made a note in the previous one that at that point. I mean, that's just my thoughts. And
You
my
think it
knowledge.
would satisfy the procedure better?
I think it would personally. But
Well,
I mean,
All I'm gonna do is say that I recommend that Tracy talks to
Right.
the city's legal staff to see whether it's even possible to explore an easement on that property.
Yeah, I mean, totally. And I think from what she said at the last meeting, that she's already doing that. Too.
Yeah.
I know, and
That's
I
right.
want to support her doing that.
Okay. So that we support her in doing it.
Sure, it has to be an action, but
I don't know if
I'm
it
not
has to be a
against-
motion,
I don't
but-
think it's like a violation of that
Aye, aye, aye.
either. So,
I want to make it as formal as possible.
okay, so make your motion.
I will.
Okay, you're the chair.
I move
You take your
for
responsibilities.
the city to explore the ability to acquire easements on an easement on the southern 320 acres as well.
All right.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do we have further discussion on this? Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay?
I can't vote. I'm an alternate. I can only vote when there's no quorum.
Okay, good.
You can abstain as well.
Well, I put my discussion in there.
Yeah, it's discussing. It's just we have a quorum, so we cannot vote.
What was the name of this property? It's called the boat.
Deer Capital.
Deer. D-H-I-R.
Deer Capital.
DHIR.
DHIR. Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, moving on to the third property.
Okay.
Chris, what do you have for us?
This is the one. This is
It's getting good. It's getting good.
This would be to purchase these parcels on the north and south side of the creek, immediately west of the existing nature preserve, with the idea that this would go eventually into habitat and expand the existing preserve and access.
And that is not an easement. That is a fee title. So,
Nice.
but my understanding is that it's, I mean, the landowners are not in the loop yet, right?
Landowners are not in the group yet?
In the loop.
Oh, in the loop. There's been some discussions. I know that the broker has
Yeah.
contacted them. I don't know what the response has been, if any.
Does they show clause moving out of the company's will just
Just trying to see if there's a possibility of us
They-
buying the property
they
inside the
would-
levy.
sell it to us, yeah.
Yeah, not the whole property, just the part inside the levy.
That little one in the broken red line.
So yeah, so the idea with this that it would actually eventually be brought into the portfolio that I manage, it would be an active part of the city's open space and public access.
And it would more than double the size of the Buddha Creek.
Correct.
Sasquatch.
And as far as connectivity goes, so it would be these parcels here,
Mm-hmm.
and then I believe, tell me if I'm wrong, Patrick, the riparian preserve on the campus goes to this parcel here, I believe.
No.
Does it go even further?
It's further
further east.
No, it's further
west.
Oh, no, wait,
further
this
west.
Is, sorry, this
But-
is the new wetlands.
That's
That's
the
the new
wetlands,
wetland, yeah.
So we would be what 1.5 river miles or so from the other, maybe 2
Yeah.
river miles.
And for people that are new, a great idea of this commission is to one day have all along the South Fork to the creek between Old Davis Road all the way to the South Fork Preserve, and to restore that and have a walking path and a bunch of good things. I mean, that's the grand plan for, but it would be going toward this. And it makes a lot of sense, it being between the two big levees. And
Just to clarify, this is an informational update, not a
that she prepares the full report. Is there additional language?
You were
No,
good
that's
at that.
perfect. That's perfect.
Ramiro, you were so.
Muddy it up.
I'll second.
We have any discussion on this?
It's very exciting. And we may have the money in the bank. And also, I think in terms of Measure it's also something that the citizen of Davis would care very much about if that happens, because citizens of Davis care about the South Fork Preserve. I mean, at least some of them. I mean, a good bunch of them, right? And it's becoming very popular, right? And that's something that they value in Measure more than knowing that some little square of orchard somewhere is not going to get developed. I mean, it's all good, but if they can go there and hike and look at the creek, it's very different. So I think it has a lot of value.
I trespassed on that property for recreational purposes. It's beautiful.
Yeah, but so anyhow,
Did someone second? Who seconded?
Yes.
Sarah.
Any other discussion, comments? All in favor of the motion on the table, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. Okay. Moving along.
okay.
On to the Gill property.
Yep.
Like I said, this is an unprecedented meeting. We've never had 4 consecutive acquisition items.
This was very too.
She's very excited. So
Yeah,
this is
that.
the same. So you have a recommendation.
Okay.
Okay, so this is north and east. Here's the Mace curve
Gill.
here.
Oh, the last one?
Oh, the last one is
HM Clause and something else.
And I forgot the name of that guy.
And Shoning.
Oh yeah, Shoning.
Shoning.
Shoning Trust.
This is Gill. This is Mace curve north
Right.
of town. This is County Road 30. This one right here. So you will see it.
So, and there's connectivity there. Yeah, these things here.
Including connectivity to
Is that connected to the piece that we have to the south?
Yeah.
It is?
It's immediately adjacent to it. It's the same owner.
Okay, great.
It's the same owner that right now owns the little triangle piece, but is in the northern piece is in escrow to the owner that we've already worked with on the easements in the south.
And we already done an easement right to the east of that, right here.
No, we have not on the east. That's the alfalfa field easement that we have.
No, I think so. Oh, but yeah, we've done it to the east and the south. Yeah, I misspoke there.
Sorry.
Right there.
Yeah, it's like here. Bring it up a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Right. So there's definitely a big chunk there that's already green. So
And this is the Howard Clayton Ranch. So this is all the fee title of
That's fee title, the one
Yeah.
adjacent to the highway.
yeah.
The ditches there, all of the storm drain water that goes from downtown Davis goes down the ditch along that
Yes.
huge habitat potential.
It does, and we're not going to talk about it tonight.
Okay.
Just let me know.
Because it's
huge.
Yes, but that's a whole other topic, and we have a whole world of opportunity with that. But let's focus on Gills. Yes.
And it's fee title and it's not really measurable, but
Okay.
also
For another day.
It's part of the long range thinking that's been brought up more than once in here. So yes, that's definitely on the radar.
It's very exciting. I've looked at that a lot.
Yeah.
So we have thoughts on this particular opportunity. We have a motion.
What is our charge? Is to go ahead with the report?
To have Tracy do a preliminary report.
No. Yeah.
Motion.
What?
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
Same as the last one that we just did.
Yeah, with the property.
Did you just make that motion?
I just made the motion.
Okay. Do we have a second on that?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion on the table, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
And that one was called Guild.
The Gill.
Gil.
Yeah.
Okay. So then moving to the land management item.
So I've got a brief
Oh,
slideshow and some pictures,
Oh, nice.
and just a brief discussion of what I'm doing and what our priorities are right now out in the field on the open space sites. So, this is out at South Fork Nature Preserve. This is an old black willow. It's pretty amazing.
Oh,
Yeah.
So what I do every day, the acreage kind of varies depending on who asks me. But we've got about 200 acres. It's actually the open space. We end up, and I'll show you later, we end up helping out a lot with public works, especially stormwater and all of the kind of unpark-like resources that the city has. We have a lot of crossover between what we do and what especially stormwater does and even transportation. So we help out a lot with that support. But the 200 acres that we have, like I said, is pretty much all with the public access and the habitat. They're all owned by the city, we said, and with the here for the public. And to Mark's comment earlier, and then 8.5, 9 years I've been here, and I have seen an exponential growth in the usage of these sites, and specifically 2020 changed everything. We went from having kind of a background, uber local crowd that really used most of these sites to people coming from all over the place, people finding it on Waze on their way to and from the Bay Area and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
So there regular outdoor education events now at South Fork and everything, and so the demand for the sites has exploded, and I'm happy for that. If anything, it makes my job a little bit easier because it keeps out the use that we don't want on a lot of these sites, and so that's been really helpful. But on the flip side, the usage does provide impacts, and so the idea that we could, with the work that you all just did, expand that, and with the city growing and the area growing and the demand for the resources growing, to have more of them, I think would be amazing. And what we do, with where we can and with the tools that we have, we're trying to manage these sites as part of a system, or a larger system that they are supposed to be, that they were at one time, that we are trying to build back together through all this connectivity and conservation. And so we're trying to think about how those systems act, mimic the processes that take place in those systems, specifically light and healthy disturbances, to help promote biodiversity over time. And that's really kind of the ethos that we take to all of the work that we do. And it's not, myself, I'm the only full-time city staff for open space. Tracy's time is split, and I have one part-time 1,000-hour TPT to help me in the field. So we rely really heavily on our partners. Yellow RCD is our big partner. They take the bulk of our contracting budget, and they kind of act as, Steve.
TCP?
Oh, I'm sorry. The YOLO Resource Conservation
No, before you mentioned
Temporary, part-time.
the
Yeah.
part-time
I'm sorry,
person being a
Yeah, temporary part-time.
Okay. Sorry, I just didn't know the answer.
temporary part-time person.
I'll get the lingo later.
No, I'm sorry, I'm speaking fast.
But the
Yeah,
RCD.
So yeah, we rely heavily on our partners. The RCD is kind of like a little de facto staff. They are they're a special district, so they're a partner agency, which is nice. It makes for easy contracting. And their staff, they're also conservationists. They know this area, they know the habitat, they know the weeds, they know the natives, they know the rules. So they are fantastic to have as partners. And then all our local service organizations, students, interns, volunteers, whatnot. And that's how we get it all done. We kind of have two big priorities throughout the system that we're working on right now. South Fork Preserve, right? It's our biggest parcel. It's the crown jewel of the open space. And we are about a year and a half into kind of an intensive broadleaf invasive species control project where the kind of post-flooding and with other priorities around town, things kind of get out of hand in our grasslands. So we've had some good success reclaiming the oak savanna, and we've done 2 years now of targeted grazing with a good partner that we have out of Cape Hay called Perennial Grazing, and we are looking to conduct our first prescribed burn on about 20 acres of the preserve this fall. So we're really excited about that.
That's awesome.
We did a small burn actually on the Howard Ranch last year as kind of a primer and a work through on how to actually get it all done and who to work with and how to do it. We did that successfully in the fact that we started a fire, but immediately had to put it out because of the way the smoke blew. But we have good partners now with the RCD and our city fire department, and we're all working together to hopefully get this done in November before Thanksgiving is kind of the goal. So the idea there is that we're trying to bring back, again, healthy light, natural disturbance on the landscape that is a driver of biodiversity in these systems. And these systems are choked with a lot of non-native annual vegetation. And so the grazing and the fire really helps reduce that biomass and bring back some good nutrient cycling that things like mowing just can't replicate. And so that's a lot of work, a lot of administration work to do stuff like that. And then this is just the grazing too. So this was this spring back there in the same area that we're going to burn this fall. So after a couple of years of the grazing, we haven't grazed the same piece now. We've moved the herd through the entire 100 acres on the south side of the creek over the 2 years, so we haven't double grazed any pieces yet. And with the grazing and the wet winter, we had a bumper crop of annual grasses, which is okay, but the system is at least really healthy and really, the system is incredibly productive. So if we can get to a better balance of, A, soil health, and B, native grass and forbs up on top, I think that we could get a nice bump in our biodiversity. So that's really our long-term goal that we're trying to do out there. And South Fork's perfect, right, because we're outside of town. We have the acreage where we can actually do these things. We can bring the animals in the numbers we need to. We can actually do a burn and have it be a feasible thing, not just a non-starter as far as a conservation tool. And it's kind of it's our microcosm for everything we would love to do everywhere else. And so we do it all there and then take what we can from South Fork and bring it to the other sites. Any questions about South Fork or what we'll just shout them out?
I have a question, because
Yeah.
it's just more general. Are there, I mean, you're essentially a one-person team, so, but I hear there's partners, so maybe this is possible. Are there monitoring plans, tracking, reporting out any metrics?
That's been the hardest thing for us to do internally. I have a published management plan for the Wild Horse Ag Buffer, actually, that I did probably 6 years ago now or something like that. So we have a land management plan, a structure, a template for recreation creating for other sites. It includes avian monitoring, photo monitoring, veg monitoring, protocols, all of it. I have no time to actually put something like that on the ground. The one thing that we do actively monitor and report on is actually at Wild Horse. It's the northeast corner of Wild Horse here. We manage specifically for burrowing owl habitat. And so that 3 acres or so up there in the corner, we actively monitor during the growing season, and we mow to keep it within a certain veg height, depending on what the monitoring shows, and then we report that back to our city wildlife biologists. So that's kind of where a specific habitat need that we actively monitor for. But I don't have the ability to do, annual monitoring to show like avian species diversity over time or something like that.
Oh, if you are interested in that, there is a community science education expert, UC Davis, who's worked with Center for Watershed Sciences and doing really cool community science that engages kids on for salmon, but also just broad community engaged science, it's her expertise. But there's a whole wouldn't be your time, right? But other opportunities I know even to pursue. So maybe even within this commission could be a point of the community engagement partnership priority. If you had a little bit of time to think about how, and the partnership priority, that point brings together a few opportunities around that space.
Absolutely. Anything that I can take a little bit of time and rent somebody up on what we do and then have them take that forward, that's really valuable to us. We have a little bit of the background. There is the UC Davis monitoring along Cuda Creek for the nest box monitoring that Melanie Truman's been doing for 20-some years or something. So our site is part of that monitoring, so that we can use that data to inform, and we've looked at that before. But other than that, I would love to have a better place to go to lean on somebody to help me coordinate citizen science or anything like that. So I try to bring in, I teach part-time at American River College, and I've been successful bringing interns here and there from school to work with us here. And so those folks we try to put out to do the burrowing owl monitoring and stuff like that, but I have yet to get a consistent flow where I always have students coming in, because that would be another outlet for that, building those protocols and then handing them to whoever's interning with us at the time. So, but we are always trying to build that up and build our capacity to host folks to do those things. So definitely a priority. And then actually the grazing is something too that we're trying to kind of build up citywide. And
I was curious about oak planting. Do you any valley oak plantings with the cages and stuff?
We don't have any. Well, I'll show you where our young plants are. There's 3 oak trees in it. But for the most part, especially anything on the south side of town, the oak trees are weeds. They come up so thick and so fast on the South Davis sites, and even in the places that aren't or haven't been traditionally graced at South Fork, oaks and walnuts too are they're readily volunteer.
Oh, great.
So it's really in the north and the east side we have an issue with them. But I've been proud to bring more grazing to the whole city. This is a stormwater basin in West Davis, and so we facilitated working with Public Works, getting the animals out for the second year in a row. And so we're really happy that we can be using, anything other than mowing, anything that's more ecologically sound, anything that's actually going to give the Public Works folks the conditions that they want to see without all of their time and effort. So this has been a pretty good win for us. So I mentioned this is the big ranch that's just south and east of, I think the Gale property is right about here in that picture that we just looked at. And so this is about 780 acres or so. I think the whole thing here. And so we have 1 and 3-year-old hedgerows now on this site. We have a 3-year-old hedgerow that actually goes around the cell tower facility here towards the front of the ranch. And then we have these 3 new hedgerow plantings that we started with the Yale RCD this last year. So this will be their second winter this winter for the plants. It's 600 plants and about 1,000 plugs, forbs, and grasses on the 3 sites. And this is funded through the state because we have a conservation carbon farm plan for this ranch parcel. And so the carbon farm plan is a document that prioritizes a bunch of both farming practices and conservation practices to help sequester carbon. And the fact that we have that plan that's been written and published allows us to use it to get grant funds from the state to implement those things. And so that's what we've done here.
In particular for hedgerows, right?
And specifically, we went for hedgerows here on the ranch because that was something that we could directly do with the RCD. We're not involved in any farming operations out there, so that any alterations to the farming regime is done through the lease through the farmer. So we're starting with the hedgerows, and unfortunately, the funny thing we found out when we went to do this project is you think that we can just put hedgerows anywhere we want over this almost 800 acres. It's covered in gas lines. There's gas lines all over the property.
Oh, great.
All over the property. And so we filtered, and basically these are the spots where there's no underground utilities to interfere with the hedgerows. So a lot of land, and unfortunately kind of small amount of space to put hedgerows.
So those gas lines, they're going east to west? Or?
They go all.
Are they active?
Yeah.
Wow.
I got, when I did all my USAs to do this, I have like a laundry list of responses to them. It's amazing. And so, right, because it's grant funded, we didn't want to put it in conflict with something that could eventually have to be torn out for maintenance or an emergency. So that's why we were this. But to Steve, to your point, the carbon farm plan identifies other habitat possibilities for improvements in the future and their carbon benefits. And so, there are abilities for future discussions to do things on this range at some point. So.
Would the city be able to apply to NRCS for things like that, or not because it?
I don't think so as an agency.
Yeah.
We can. I believe even the lessee can get NRCS matching funds to do things, and they have converted to drip a bunch of the acreage here on the west side. I believe they used NRCS to do that. So they're doing their own internal upgrades. And this is everything out there is all row crops and dry farmed. So there's no permanent crops out there.
And then the last one is mostly hay, right?
Yeah, this was because
This
is all dry farmed. There's no water that gets out here, and everything that moves across the site when it's wet pools up back in here too.
Because it goes against the levee. And then there's pumps.
We're actually looking at that as a 100-acre potential wetland. That tan section right there.
Yeah, so and that's identified in that carbon farm plan too.
And there's no gas lines. Would a wetland conflict with a gas line?
I don't know. We'd have to look at that again.
Curious.
Yeah. But then,
Just go electric, man.
all of the giant channel through here, it's got a lot of habitat potential. I mean, it is good habitat, isn't it? But these hedgerows have been a priority for us because this has been an incredibly harsh summer for young plants. And I've actually been really proud of us to be able to keep water on it. The only place we have actual access to water is this little piece. So we have to take from a ditch or over bring the water out here and we have to truck the water over here. And despite that, we had like 90% survivability over the summer, so
That's
we were very proud of that. So, but that has been a big push for us on the ground this summer. And it's fun too being out there and sort of make improvements on this ground because it's, you know, you can tell it's a leased farm and nobody lives on it just by the way kind of trash accumulates to the front and stuff gets piled up and stuff. So we've been slowly clawing that back and taking that stuff out and want to get to a point where, you know, it looks like a nice city property as much as anything. So this is just us out there recently with the, this is the Wildlife Conservation Board. They funded it, so they were checking it out. We have a ton of milkweed, narrowleaf milkweed. We've got a lot of milkweed on all of our sites. That's been part of all of our improvements that we've been doing around the city. That's been a real big win. It's really proliferating everywhere we've either protected it or planted it. And actually talk about connectivity, and this is that the piece out by the levee in the north end here. Say that going back, County Road 30, going back towards that field property, there are field edges all along that road with, you know, just volunteer narrowleaf milkweed, licorice, you know, alkali heliotrope, and all these special natives that really enjoy that soil out there and that kind of bottom of the watershed. So we're hoping all that stuff's going to do real well and spread all around the board.
Is that alkali sink soil out there?
Yeah, it really favors the natives. It's really cool. Yeah. And so that's what we're doing. And then this is Mace Ranch Park. I don't know if anybody's ever been. There's a little piece inside Mace Ranch Park that's we call our passive rec area. It's a native grass, sand, and other associated shrubs and trees. And so I was just really happy with the sand, how it's looking, how we've been able to manage it, keep the weeds out. And this is kind of our priority for what we're trying to do across our sites, with the idea that actually there's one thing missing from this picture. And I want to bring more of it out. So there's no native forms in this picture. That is, in my opinion, that's the biodiversity piece that's kind of missing from all of our sites. It's where this system really provides a lot of its diversity is in its forward mixes, our grasslands and savannas. And so, with the idea that we can actually not have this covered in star thistle, that we can actually adding back in things like poppies or whatever the forward mix calls for, and have that native proliferation going. So that's kind of system-wide what we're trying to do.
The Hedgerow Farms folks, with John Anderson. Did you ever know John Anderson?
Yeah.
That was his big thing at the end of his life. He wanted to get the farms into the grasslands. And big push on that. So I'm hoping that they have seed source for you.
They do. I mean, we pretty much exclusively buy seed from Hedgerow, especially the form seed. In fits and starts, we're trying to collect material wherever we can from outlying areas from our older sites to bring to our newer sites. I have a stockpile of stuff that I've collected that I'm, after our burn, I'm going to put back out in there and start tracking. So we're really excited about that. And then we're hoping with the combination, especially grazing and burning, that again, that is what that system is developed with over time. And thinking back to like my John Muir readings and his comments about that this is it's a foreland, not a grassland, with the density of the flowering plants. I don't know if we'll ever get there, but that's kind of my ideal that I hold in my hands. So and that's the last thing I had. So. All right. Great.
Thank you, Chris.
Any wrap-up thoughts, questions?
Well, yeah, I want to build on what Lindsay, sorry, I keep looking at the name tags. Lindsay was saying about the citizen science professor and monitoring stuff. Is there any way that, Chris, you would want the commission to support you in helping build partnerships like that? Or I don't really know like what we can and can't do around that kind of stuff, but if
yeah, I mean, any leads, that's always helpful. And I've worked in the past with subcommittees on more specific things.
So if there are interest, there could be a subcommittee that works on that and reports to the legal commission and try to make things happen.
Or it doesn't even need to be that formal. It could just be you talking to
But
professor. Just
She's like an educational specialist, but the Center for Community Science at UC Davis. I'd be happy to like send some additional information to you and Tracy if you're interested. Christina, I think too, send me an email and copy you on that.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I just feel like we have UC Davis. There's so many folks that work in this area, and it seems like there could at least be projects, if not, some labs want to take it on.
Yeah, I think what I haven't found right is that like the professor I can work with, they can bring their class out, where I've got the person who's always there that I can work with.
Right.
Because we've had a lot of students come through and do research at South Fork and other things, but they come and go, and so
So the Center for Community Science would be more like creating the plan and institutionalizing the educational component so that you can probably have a rotation of different classes or students so it would like be establishing the community science program and then you can engage different professors or classes over time with. So it'd be like sorting out, is there a seasonal component, like what are some of the learning objectives that are beneficial for the students as well as for you. So it'd be like building a program really, I think.
That would be fantastic. Any structure I can get pre-downloaded like that, that's so helpful. Definitely.
Okay, well I'll follow up because that's an interest of mine and I
Awesome.
think some of the,
Great.
okay.
Thank you.
And especially around the grazing, it'd be really cool to get some of the field trips at South Fork that are out there, like around when the animals are out there. I don't know if that's a possibility, but when my daughter's class went out there, like I think the kids would have loved to see like goats grazing. And when UC Davis did the sheep grazing thing, like the kids loved it. So the like opportunities to like a couple things that are already happening, to build sort of community engagement on that would be great.
That would be so cool to get a little structure that I can work with.
Yeah, if there's an opportunity, like we have goats or sheep, like any other field trips, like with the Yellow Basin Foundation, right? They come out there too.
They
So
come out to South.
like letting them know when those are, so they can help like couple field trips.
Yeah.
Would be really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Sorry.
Thank you.
Good. You have an assignment.
Send an email.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Moving on to liaison assignments, which is essentially me. Still nothing on the Yellow Habitat Conservancy subcommittee thing I'm on, but Lower Poudre Creek Coordinating Committee, the big thing that's happening is we are working to try, well, I should back up. So on the creek right now, down in the Yellow Bypass area, there's a temporary check dam that's in right now, and what it's used for is the rice farmers put the dam in, raise the water level on a section of the creek to be able to flood up the rice fields. That check dam is a blockage to salmon coming up, and so there's in the court settlement that's in place, language saying when that check dam needs to come down for the salmon to be able to come up in the fall. And basically what we've been figuring out is that the earlier we can take that down, the more salmon are able to come up. We thought originally that it was kind of November, December-ish that the salmon, but really it's September to October is when the salmon are starting to pool up there. And so we've got some plans in place this year, so it's already happening to do kind of a combination of take the boards down for a few days with a pulse flow of water coming down from Lake Berryessa as an attraction flow, and then the board's going back up for a few days, and so a combination of that. But one of the big things that that has just been implemented, and we're actually having a field trip down there with the committee on Thursday, is we have a temporary wooden fish ladder that we put in that will allow salmon to go up and over that check dam, which is like 8 feet tall or something like that. And so we are seeing right now whether that is going to work to actually allow salmon to get up and over that check dam. And I'll find out more on Thursday on that, but this has been successful in other places, and Department of Fish and Wildlife is encouraging us to do this process. So I'm excited to see on Thursday what's actually going on down there, but I'm hoping that this will really enable many more salmon to actually get up into the creek and really help bolster the expanding population of salmon on the creek.
So would that be that they wouldn't have to pull the boards?
They still will pull the boards, but it will give more flexibility on when we can do that. Basically, they need to get the boards out of there before the winter flows start coming down, piling stuff up. So they do have to come out at some point. But this will still allow them to have their flood up from the rice fields when they need to, and still allow salmon to access that. I mean, it's probably not going to ever be as effective as just having the boards out, obviously, but it will, I really hope, be a lot more effective than just the complete blockade that is there right now.
Patrick,
Yeah.
was there an update on the channel project? I know that it was held up by some kind of gas line, of course.
So there's 2 channels. Are you talking about just the little bypass around the north side of the check dam? Or are you talking about
no,
the big
bigger one.
The big one?
Yeah.
No, but that's kind of a longer term.
Is it just not being talked about anymore? Is it kind of like that complicated?
No, it's being talked about
It is
a lot more. It kind of disappeared when Robin retired from the Yellow Basin Foundation, and it's been kind of unearthed. So the last 6 months, this has been definitely something that we're pursuing.
So glad to hear that.
Yeah, but there's a more of a stopgap measure that we're also pursuing, which is just a little kind of more permanent fish ladder ditch around the north side of the check dam.
Fascinating. That's a great stopgap measure. Yeah.
So we kind of have all 3 of these pieces moving, with the fish ladder going in first, then this maybe kind of end around, like 1,000-foot long bypass on the north side, and then finally this multi-mile, really.
It's really Puda Creek.
Puda Creek solution, yes,
It's going to be
exactly.
an extension of Puda Creek that goes on for miles.
Yeah.
It's going to be so cool. It really is. It's going to be a crown jewel
It will
for this
be.
area.
Yeah, so that's very much on the table again.
Nice.
So that's my report. Okay,
Very
going to
nice.
upcoming agenda items. Did Tracy give you any of those, Chris?
No.
Okay.
Well, yeah. Hopefully, the C and D will turn into full recommendations.
And we still have
Budget.
budget discussion to have, and we still have the general plan and what steps.
Yeah,
happen with that.
what's coming down the chute,
Yeah.
because when it's gonna come down.
Yeah. So between all of that, we'll have some stuff for next month. But I'll work with Tracy to hammer out what those items are going to actually be.
Perhaps with the budget, just within that presentation, explaining like how many acquisitions like per year over time. I mean, that might be a useful perspective.
I think she
I
usually
think it's
does
in there,
that.
but
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
to tie, circle back on that.
Good. Okay. Anything from anyone? We are adjourned.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you
Chair.
for working through those
Yes.
first few easements.
Yes.
Thank you for listening to, working through it with me.
Okay, good.
No, that. What I appreciate here is like we always try to reach some kind of a consensus and understand, everybody.
I understand that we're not always going to have consensus, and we'll have to take
No, I know.
non-unanimous
I
votes,
know,
but as
but-
much as possible, I like to
but
get
we're
to a
trying.
consensus.
better.
Yes.
We're trying.
Right, thank you.
Okay. Thanks a lot.